piston effect. Originally, they talked about a piston effect pushing the air out. Well, no piston
No.
without a collapse. So where did that
brought 'em
smoke come
down.
from? And people go, oh, they just ignore it. They don't answer the question, and they move on. They might throw another question back at you, but they don't answer it.
Anyway, I heard that at one point on one show a long time ago, and it's always been in the back of my mind that maybe somebody else heard the same thing. I don't have the ability to.
I too have heard the rumor.
The computers to find out that information, but maybe somebody that's listening will. Anyway, you guys have a great day and keep the work up. Bye.
Right on. Thank you. Yeah, and computers are wonderful things. I was getting emails from a guy that didn't seem to, have a very good grasp of English. And then all of a sudden I get an email from him that is eloquent in expression and about a paragraph long. And, no way. I wondered, here's something purportedly from this guy, but it doesn't match any of his old writings. So I did a search, and guess what? I found it was a text of an article written by another guy, and I called the guy on it, and he came back saying, you got me. But we got to do the same thing on every aspect of the 9/11 story. And guess what? The thermite story, that's been verified 7 ways to Tuesday. So that one's real. The, stories about like the black box data from the airplanes doesn't match the official story. And that's been verified 7 ways to Tuesday. By the way, another unreported story, at least unreported on this show, that the pilots for 9/11 Truth have discovered by analyzing the black box data for the flight that hit the Pentagon. I mean, not the Pentagon, but the flight, 93 that supposedly crashed just outside of Pennsylvania. It was brought down by the heroic actions of the passengers. Well, that didn't happen. It was shot down militarily. We know that by a military whistleblower. But the data from its own flight data record that the FBI certifies as real shows that the cockpit door had never opened during the flight. That means that no terrorists could have hijacked that plane unless they did it before it took off. And we already know that the pilots of the hijacker pilots didn't have any flying skills. That's a whole nother story. But one of them tried to rent a Cessna, and on his, qualification verification flight that he took with the Cessna instructor, the instructor said, no, this guy can't even fly. He can't even fly a Cessna. We're not going to let him fly a big jet. Well, there are 2 calls waiting. Next caller, you're on the air, or you're on the cable. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah. And by the way, turn off your TV in the background. It'll be less confusing for you. Or turn off the audio anyway.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Hey, just a couple questions for you. I was curious, how when all the media first, reported all the incidents and so many things happening at once, it's kind of ironic how, most of the American public didn't, realize one aspect of this, and, the part concerning the Pentagon, I mean, here's a building that is the only one in the country with their own zip code, which
also its own missile defense system too.
Yeah, I mean,
where was that?
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole thing. Here's a building that's allocating, up to $500 billion a year for military spending and whatnot, and for people not to think they don't have some kind of a defense system of their own.
Well, this conspiracy theory of the government, the official story, wants you to believe that 19 hijackers on their very first try completely defeat a $4 trillion defense system and get through all the way to the most heavily protected building in the world, the Pentagon, and manage to make it without so much as a passerby flight of an airplane, a fighter jet, or no eyeballs, questions raised, or anything. and they make it all the way through all the defenses and manage to hit the building. The only way that you can do that is if you're transmitting a friendly military transponder sequence.
Yeah, it just,
or somebody turns off the switch.
Doesn't make sense.
I don't know how you do it.
It doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up at all.
But like you say, when you look at it factually, scientifically, numbers don't lie, and certain things just aren't possible. And now, with the thermite, is that a solid or a liquid?
It's a solid, but apparently there's a version that you can paint on, so it must, be at least suspended particles. And then I'm not the expert on it, but I can tell you where Niels Harrit is the leading expert that's talking about thermite right now. And there's a Colorado cable access show called 9/11 Visibility. They've been going for several years, and that's their subject, just like this one. Only I have to say their show is a lot better than mine, at least more professional, and they have really good interviews. They had a great interview with Niels Harrit, and they had a great interview with Kevin Ryan, who was the weapons inspector for the government for UN during the Desert Storm. And he blew the whistle on the idea that there was weapons of mass destruction, and turned out that everything he said was right. But that was on the 9/11 Visibility. I strongly recommend look it up. Stephen Jones has a great interview on the same show. I found out that I can call up any of these guys, and they'll all agree to do interviews. And most of mine will have to be by telephone. But on that vein, Richard Gage is probably going to be interviewed live on the March 20th show that's coming up next month, the second show next month. So tune in for that one.
Well, terrific. Well, I appreciate your time.
And thanks for calling. And
yeah,
any ideas you have, be sure to call or email me. My email's on the back of the show here, 251omega@comcast.net, for as long as Comcast doesn't classify me as a terrorist.
Yeah, well, he's got to keep spreading the word. It's a good deal. It's a good deal, Bill.
Thanks for calling.
All right, have a good day.
Thank you. And next caller, we got another caller here. If they had the patience to wait for me to put them on. Are you there, caller?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say about the prisons. We waste trillions and trillions of dollars in prison money.
It's the prison industrial complex, and in order to sustain it, you have to keep arresting people, which, that's what's wrong with the idea of building the new Guantanamo prison near Detroit or wherever they were. As long as we have a prison specifically for it, we'll keep people in it.
No, we don't need to keep people in the prisons. We need to get the people out of prisons.
I agree. Our own prisons are some of the worst in the world, and of course our country is known now as the #1 terrorist country in the world, and we routinely kidnap people and ship them off to secret prisons where they're tortured. And where do you suppose they get the people to run those prisons? Guess what? They get them from our prisons. The people that have been, kicked out of our prisons for abusing the prisoners, they use those guys to run our torture prisons. Anyway, you hit a real important thing about our system. They're talking about not giving any of these guys any sort of fair trial. We want to give them a military trial so they can be convicted whether they're guilty or not. And then
I think they should take the prisoners to war, get rid of our soldiers. They're killing our soldiers. There are so many prisoners in the prisons right now. To run this war it's ridiculous. It's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that we're supporting the prisoners in America prison for nothing. They're no good to society.
Well, absolutely, and most of them are there, with the exception of some of the violent ones.
And those are the people that should be taken to war or hung and killed. There's no point in
when you keep saying take them to war, no, our own neighbors, your children, my